Well, folks, I am Dave.
And I am Sean.
Together we are Barstools and Bandtalk, the complete world domination entertainment mecca of a fountain of information. How you doing, Sean?
We've branched out. We're not just the maritime music bucket list. We are the plethora of bucket lists. I'm doing great. I am very excited for this interview. I've been talking to this gentleman now for our good friend Wayne Camo hooked me up with this gentleman. I had the opportunity to chat with him a month or so ago live. He and I have been texting like crazy. Anybody that's a music fan is going to recognize his name. If you don't mind, I'll do just a quick little who he is.
Yeah.
So tonight we have another exclusive Barstools scoop here. We've got Anthony Esposito. He's a major Philadelphia Flyers hockey fan. He's played with Lynch Mob. He's played with Red Dragon Cartel. He's produced Ace Frehley. We're going to go into all this stuff. And I got to tell you, there's no finer gentleman than this guy, and he's going to like this as soon as he comes on.
Ah, you're suckle, and good for you.
Mr. Anthony Esposito.
All right.
I figured you'd like that. Figured you'd like that, Anthony.
What?
Right here?
I think they just scored. Hang on.
Yes.
All right, whatever.
Oh, look, he's sporting the Flyers swag there himself. So in the intro, I did mention that you're a huge Flyers fan.
Huge. I'm actually trying to write. Well, we were trying to get Speedbag or Havana off Patina of the last Red Dragon Cartel record as the goal song for the Flyers, but they picked some like fucking techno song. I'm really pissed off, but I'm probably gonna end up trying to write a song. I was thinking of calling it like Broad Street Lamplighter, you know, like how they light the lamp when you score a goal.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of writing a new goal song for the Flyers, I think.
So my first question to you is this. So are you any relation to the Esposito players from the NHL?
I wish.
Ah.
Only son of an only.
He may or may not know this. They're from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. So and Anthony's straight out of New York. So
Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Where is that?
Yeah. So if you go north of Toronto and then travel another 5 hours, you're going to find it. It's actually on the Michigan border. There's a Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and the Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. So,
yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So you got a geography lesson tonight too, Anthony. So all is not lost.
Detroit.
I'm sorry?
Do you go over the border and go see shows in Detroit?
I used to when I lived up in Toronto, for sure. Used to go there all the time. Yeah.
So from where we are, that's about a 14-hour drive. So, yeah. 14, 16 hours. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, welcome to the show, though. Seriously, Anthony, we appreciate you coming on here. And I know, so whereabouts, are you still in New York or where do you live now?
I moved out of New York in 2008. I bought a horse ranch just above Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, in a small town called Dillsburg, Pennsylvania, which is the new center of the universe.
And so you have the horse farm, which you turned into a studio, and you're doing some major recording in there.
Yeah, I had a studio in New York for 15 years called Schoolhouse. And we did everybody from the Misfits, the Ramones, Joe Jett. I mean, we tracked the last record we tracked in there we did the New York Dolls, and then we did Ace Frehley Anomaly.
Wow.
And then we closed our doors, and 2 years after we closed the doors on the New York space, I bought this horse ranch, renamed the studio Obscenic Arts, moved all the gear out here, and bands come and they stay on the ranch, and we work, and I produce them and stuff. It's really fun. It's great.
Awesome. So, I mean, let's talk about you named some of your some of the folks that you produce, and I'm a huge Kiss fan, and you had mentioned Ace Frehley. One of the things when we were talking that I talked about is I asked kind of what your criteria is for, who you're going to produce. And you jokingly said, hey, if the check clears, I might be into it, but you weren't really kind of doing that. So what do you look for when you're going to produce bands?
That's like the last thing I ask for. I always ask them, I'm like, what's your budget? What can you, because most musicians are broke. I mean, I know. Lately I've been asking like clients, like, what do you do for money? Like, are you a body shop guy? Do you paint houses? And I got guys like doing plumbing and painting my house, and like doing my pickup truck needs body work. So we'll swap that out.
The old barter system. That's perfect.
Right on.
But, yeah, I mean, that's the last thing. You got to have enough money to keep the lights on, but besides that, nobody's getting rich making music,
No. Especially in this day and age. So, I mean, let's back it up a little bit. So most of the people that are going to watch this show are obviously going to go, okay, Anthony Esposito, they're going to know you from Lynch Mob, and that was probably seems like a lifetime ago to you. Tell us a little bit about that.
About 16 Lynch Mob bass players ago.
Fair enough. But you were the original.
Yeah, not extra crispy, the original.
Right on. So how did you come about getting that gig? Just, a lot of people, because we have a lot of people that, they want to do everything from studio work to they're trying to figure out how they're actually going to make it in this business. How did you go about getting that gig?
I was busting tables. And I was playing in a band. I auditioned for a band on Atlantic. They auditioned like 75 bass players. I lost the gig to Phil Susan, ironically. And they had asked me to, while Phil was still in LA, he had to get all his stuff ready to move to New York. So they asked me if I could help them stay on and audition drummers, which I did. And then the publicist at Atlantic was like, you're really good. You're a really nice guy. Let me help you out. And I got like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 auditions in like 8 days.
Wow.
And I had to fly out. And one of the auditions was Lynch Mob, and I got it. So I joined.
Wow. So for you, has it always been a passion of yours to play music? I mean, obviously you didn't want to have a passion busting tables. So, I mean, did it start at an early age, or how did it start for you?
I mean, I could pretty much like count the years that I didn't have another job throughout my life on about one hand,
Okay.
I'm an art director, set designer, and I do art direction and set design for TV commercials and MTV and movies and stuff. I do that a lot. Like I said, I bust table. I mean, I like every musician, you gotta feed your family, and you gotta put a roof over your head, and
Right.
keep the lights on. Do what you gotta do. And then there's a couple of years here and there where the dominoes line up right, and you actually can afford to just do music, which is always fun. But it never. I mean, for me, it never lasted a lifetime. Like I've always had to go back to work. I've played with a lot of people that never had to do that, and God bless them. But I've always had another job.
So I'm gonna maybe you were, but when back then when you were kind of auditioning for bands and getting Lynch Mob, had you been producing at that point, or was that something that you maybe had an eye on and you were learning from the people that you were working with? How did that kind of work out for you?
No, I mean, after Lynch Mob, after I quit, I moved back to New York City because Lynch Mob was based in Phoenix, so I had to move to Phoenix. So I needed a space in New York to put. I had this massive bass amp that I used to use on stage.
What was it? What were you using?
10s and 6 single 15s and 3. all Ampegs, you know. And I needed a place to put. I had an apartment in Manhattan, so I obviously couldn't put the bass amp in my apartment. And I also had 2 Harleys, so I had to rent this industrial space in Manhattan to park my bikes and my bass amp. So I called an old high school buddy who I always had bands with, and I'm like, you know what? I got this room. Why don't we just buy a PA, throw it in the corner, and just start playing again? So we started rehearsing, and we had this band. It was called Lockjaw, and I knew everybody in New York anyway, and people would always come and hang out at rehearsals, and they were like, "Oh my God, this space is great. Can we rehearse here too? Like, you know, we'll do Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. You do Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and we'll help with the rent." And I was like, "Sure." And then before you know it, I have like the whole East Village in New York rehearsing in my room, and it's actually starting to make money, right?
Wow.
So I had a buddy who did jingles, and he had a small recording setup. So he's like, "You mind if I take one of the corners of the room? You only do rehearsals at night. I could do jingles during the day." And I'm like, "Sure." So he puts his rig in there. Then all of a sudden, all the bands that were rehearsing would come in and see the recording studio in the corner, and they all needed demos to get gigs and stuff like that, and press vinyl or whatever, make cassettes. So before you know it, we start recording all these bands in the East Village, and that's how I started to produce and engineer. But also one of the bands that I played with before I joined Lynch Mob was managed by Tony Bon Jovi, who owned Power Station. It was John's uncle. Okay. And he would actually live upstairs. The whole band was from Indiana except for me. And the band used to live upstairs in Tony's penthouse. And we were basically slaves. You know, we would solder cables and get coffee on the sessions and stuff. So I was always around the studio and watching all these amazing engineers at Power Station and these amazing producers. And that's how I started getting the bug and writing stuff down, seeing how people mic drums and EQ. And when I had the studio, when the studio developed after the years, I'm a gear junkie. Like literally there were years where I was sleeping on the floor in the studio because I didn't want to have to waste any money on rent for an apartment in Manhattan. So I'd sleep on an air mattress underneath the drum riser that I would pull out in the bed. Sleep on that just so I can afford buying more mics and compressors and stuff. And as the studio grew, more outside great producers wanted to come in and use the room. So I got to assist and watch them and learn that way as well on top of what I already learned, you know.
So were these people, were they forthcoming with their information now, Anthony? Were they say, "Hey, we appreciate the fact that you're keen, kid. Let us give you a few tips"? Like, were they like that, these guys you were watching back then?
Always. They're amazing guys. Like musicians, like most producers want to share the knowledge. They're not jerks. And I'm talking, like we had guys like Jack Douglas, Jay Messina, like we have these amazing, legendary producers, and Tim Hatfield, like these amazing engineers and producers would come in, and I would just basically watch them and take photographs of mic placement and watch their EQs. I mean, you got to remember they would leave and everything would still be set up because I didn't break it down yet. So, you know, document it. I have a book where all my drawings and my notes and everything.
So, I mean, and I want to go back because you and I had a great conversation about your studio and some other things. I do want to cover that. But I also did, after you and I sort of chatted for the first time, I went back and I read some press that you did on, you know, your career. And I don't want to get too much into, you know, Lynch Mob other than to say, did you enjoy your time when you were part of that band?
Yeah, I mean, who's not going to? I was 20 years old. I just stopped busting tables. I'm in a band with 2 of the guys from Dokken who just did Monsters of Rock. We released an album that goes gold, and we're playing in arenas. Like, I mean, who wouldn't in a pig in shit? And I knew how lucky, and I was going to enjoy every moment. Yeah, and I did, you know. It was a great time. I mean, that period. And we made a monster record, and we got to tour with some amazing bands, and we had credibility. We weren't a hair band that didn't have credibility. We could play with anyone, anywhere, anytime, on any stage, anyone, and hold our own. And the lineup was great, and we did, you know, it was a lot of fun. I got to see the world, and yeah, I mean, who wouldn't like love that?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
I would argue two great records because I love the first one, but that second album was absolutely fantastic.
Thanks, thank you. I mean, it's obvious. First record was a lot, you know, it's Max Norman, and the second record is Keith Olsen. And I think that the producer's stamp is definitely evident on both those albums. Like the second one sounds a lot like Keith's kind of style, and the first one sounds a lot like Max's kind of style, you know?
So Anthony, did you have writing credits from either of those albums now? Was that enough to get the seed money to get the studio started? Yeah?
Split everything equally in Lynch Mob.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I'm 22 years old, and I'm getting a royalty rate the same as George. Like, that's pretty awesome, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would have put you in the line of fire because obviously there was that acrimonious split between him and Don, and, you know, and everybody can go and research what happened. But I mean, Don goes off and does his thing. You know, George goes off and does his thing. You know, Don's album was, Mickey D to me is a beast. He's an absolute beast. But I mean, that first Lynch Mob album is wow. I mean, just lights
We
up.
blew the off Don's record. Come on, it's not even close.
Well, I'm trying to be politically correct, but
No. Any rock band knew that album. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Listen, let's do this.
Hey.
We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll get more into about what you're doing now. Is that cool?
Awesome.
All right. So folks, we'll be right back after these messages.
Barstools Bandtalk, the complete Bandtalk music bucket list.